welcome to the Man of War YouTube channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at my First Sliver Commander deck. First Sliver is 5 CMC, one of each color for a 7/7 legendary sliver. It has Cascade, and sliver spells you cast have Cascade. Cascade is, when you cast this spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost, and you put the exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. When the first sliver is on the battlefield, all the sliver spells you cast will have Cascade. This means that when you cast a sliver spell, you'll cascade into potentially another sliver, and then when you cast that sliver off Cascade, you'll cascade again. Moving on to the lands, I have 36 in this deck. Seems like an appropriate amount to balance consistent land drops and drawing spells as well. I have 2 Triumphs, Rafine's Tower and Xander's Lounge. I have City of Brass and Mana Confluence, both of which you can pay 1 life to tap for 1 mana of any color. I have Exotic Orchard, which taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls can produce, and in a 5-color deck, you'll always be able to use that mana. I have Cavern of Souls, which enters the battlefield. You choose a creature type. Obviously, we'll choose Slivers. It can tap for a colorless, and it can tap for 1 mana of any color. You can spend this to only cast creatures of the chosen type, but it has the added value of not allowing the sliver you cast with this mana to be countered. Then I have Sliver Hive, also taps for a colorless. You can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, spend this only to cast sliver spells, and then it also has the ability to tap and pay 5, put a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token onto the battlefield. Activate this only if you control a sliver. Finally, I have all 10 shock lands in here, 2 check lands and 2 fetch lands, and then the rest are basics to round it out. Overall, I think the mana base could still use some upgrading, although upgrading a 5-color mana base tends to be pretty expensive. From there, we're going to look at ramp. I have 9 signets, in addition to Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, Birds of Paradise, and then I have 2 slivers that ramp me, Mana Weft Sliver and Gemhide Sliver, both of which give slivers I control the ability to tap for 1 mana of any color. In terms of removal and interaction, I have 11 pieces of removal in the deck. This includes 2 counterspells with traditional counterspell and then Mana Drain, which is a very powerful counterspell. I have 3 board wipes, Blasphemous Act, Toxic Deluge, and Wrath of God. And then 5 targeted removal spells, Beast Within, Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares, Terminate, and Vindicate. And then finally, I have Harmonic Sliver. This one's very good in this deck. It gives all my slivers the ability, when this permanent enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So once this guy's on the battlefield, every time you play a sliver spell, you will be able to destroy a target artifact or enchantment. One thing you have to keep in mind is if there are no legal targets on your opponent's battlefield and you play this card, you will have to target something, and if you have an artifact or enchantment, you will have to target your own card. I also have some Cascade synergy in the deck. Not a whole lot, but it adds a little bit extra value and consistency in terms of your Cascade triggers. It is top deck manipulation. The best one here is Vampiric Tutor. You can pay 1 black and 2 life, search your library for a card, then shuffle and put that card on the top of your library. So you can play a big sliver, and then in response to the Cascade trigger, you can cast Vampiric Tutor, put whatever you want on the top of your library, and then cast that card for free. It's a similar idea with Brainstorm. At instant speed, you can look at the top 3 and then put a card from your hand or those drawn cards on the top of your library. And then Preordain is sorcery speed, but it's kind of the same idea. I have 5 pieces of enchantment-based card draw engines in the deck. Bind of Thassa. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Very good, because most of the win cons in this deck are going to be combat damage from our Slivers. Descendant's Path. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card that shares a creature type with a creature you control, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't cast it, put it on the bottom of your library. So this is like pseudo card draw. If you have a Sliver on the battlefield and you reveal a Sliver, you get to cast it for free. It's typically better in late game because if you're in early game and you're looking for a land drop or ramp or more card draw and you flip that, you'll have to put that on the bottom of your library and then you won't get to use that card. Moving on from there, I have Elemental Bond, which is a staple in green. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Guardian Project. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card, essentially, in Commander, because it's a singleton format. Kindred Discovery is a very good one in blue. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, you draw a card. And then I have 1 piece of creature-based card draw. Synapse Sliver. Whenever a Sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may draw a card. And we're going to be dealing combat damage with most of our Slivers, ideally, so we'll be drawing a lot of cards if this guy's on the battlefield. Moving on from there, we're going to talk about the rest of the Slivers in the deck. I have 28 of them that don't really fit into any of the other categories. It's important to have a critical mass of Slivers so that you can consistently cascade into more Slivers and chain them together so you can build board states really quickly without spending a lot of mana. Sliver decks are generally quite easy to make strong in terms of tribal decks because each Sliver gives its ability to the rest of the Slivers that you control or on the battlefield, or Sliver spells in your hand or that you cast. So the idea is to build a board state with as many Slivers as you can, and they'll all have each other's abilities, and then ideally it's too much value for your opponents to deal with and you win the game. I also have 5 out of the 6 legendary Slivers in this deck, one of them being my commander, the First Sliver. The other 4 are Sliver Hive Lord, which gives Sliver creatures you control indestructible. Sliver Legion, all Slivers you control get +1/+1 for each other Sliver on the battlefield. Sliver Overlord, this allows you to pay 3 and search for a Sliver card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then you can pay 3 to gain control of target Sliver. And then Sliver Queen, you can pay 2 to put a Sliver token onto the battlefield. It is a 1/1 colorless creature. These are really good for a few reasons. 1, their abilities are very powerful overall. 2, they are 5 CMC, so generally when you cast one of these, if you have your commander out on the battlefield, they'll cascade, and most often you'll be able to get a relatively powerful card onto the battlefield below 5 CMC. Another important piece in this deck in terms of creatures is Morphon the Boundless. It is 7 colorless mana for a 6/6. It has Changeling, so it's every creature type. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Obviously, you're going to choose Slivers, and then spells of the chosen type you cast cost 1 of each color of mana less to cast. This effect reduces only the amount of colored mana you pay, and then other creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. So, obviously, 5-color deck, you have a lot of color requirements, and this will help you mitigate some of that restriction if you have any issues with lands. In addition to that, you notice that all the legendary slivers cost WooBird, and they are reduced by WooBird with more fun on the battlefield, so you can cast these for free and then cascade into more slivers for free, which adds a lot of value to this deck. Moving on from there, I have one piece of protection in this deck, Lightning Greaves. It'll give the equipped creature haste and shroud. This is mainly meant for the commander, because if the First Sliver is on the battlefield, it's going to be a big target for removal because it's very powerful, and it's very easy to snowball if it stays on the battlefield for a long time. So Lightning Greaves will help protect from targeted removal that your opponents are going to use. Overall, the main objective of this deck is to cascade as many times as possible, to build a board state really quickly by cheating mana cost, because when you cast a spell with cascade, it's free, so this will really speed up your ability to have a big board. In playing this deck, you'll find that the cascade ability, having it in your command zone, makes your deck very, very resilient. If your board gets wiped, you can play your commander again, and that turn that you play your commander, you'll cascade and get another spell to cast guaranteed. And then if you have another sliver spell in your hand, you can cast that after you play your commander and hopefully cascade into another sliver, or even just another value piece. And then within a turn or two after your board got wiped, you'll have another big board state, and it's hard for opponents to keep this deck down a lot of the time. This is the first commander deck I ever built. I think it's a lot of fun. I encourage anyone who's looking to build a sliver deck, or even just a 5-color deck in general, to take a look at the First Sliver. I think it's very powerful and very fun as well. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment below what other deck types you'd like to see us do on the channel, and we will see you in the next one.